Shotgun ammunition. Shotguns are often touted as being the most versatile of all firearms categories, and to some extent that's absolutely correct. That versatility actually complicates choosing suitable self-defense ammunition because there's so many options out there. So let's take a look at shotgun ammunition and figure out what we need. Gauge is a traditional way to measure shotgun bore sizes, with larger numbers equaling smaller bore sizes and smaller numbers equaling larger bore sizes. You can go ahead and Google how all that works more efficiently than I can explain it here if you're interested in learning more. The important thing is that your shotgun gauge is marked on your shotgun's barrel. It's also marked on the head stamp of the ammunition. Make sure that the gauge on your barrel matches the gauge on the ammunition that you are using. Once we have the proper gauge, now we need to determine the proper length of our shotgun shell. Just like the gauge, the length of shotgun shell that your shotgun can accommodate is also marked on the barrel. This may be 2 3/4 inch, 3 inch, 3.5 inch in the case of a 12 gauge, for example. And no matter what it says, as long as it says at least 2 3/4 inch, you're in good shape for defensive purposes. Most shotgun shells for defensive purposes are 2 3/4 inches long. There are shotgun shells, of course, that are 3 inch, 3.5 inch, and 12 gauge that are generally oriented towards hunting applications, where the increased recoil and potential overpenetration aren't as big of a concern as in defensive use. Now we want to consider payload, or what the projectiles actually are that are inside the shotgun shells. Birdshot comes in sizes from the larger letter sizes up to size 12, and higher numbers mean smaller pellets. An easy way to think about this is that one of the larger lettered shot sizes is BB, almost the same exact size as a piece of ammunition for a BB gun. All of the numbered shot sizes are smaller than this, with number 12 shot being almost like a coarse sand, extremely fine. Birdshot is for, well, mainly birds, as well as for other small game and for clay targets and things like that. Some folks would recommend birdshot for home defense. I don't think that's a great idea. There's a high likelihood that anything except for at the closest of ranges, that birdshot can produce an extremely superficial wound, which, although it looks very bad, won't stop an attacker and can put you in a very bad situation. I will grant one concession on this, and if you live in an extremely small apartment with nothing but sheetrock walls between you and the neighbors, and you're very worried about overpenetration, as long as your distances aren't over about 20 feet, then maybe that's an option, but I'd still recommend something like a number 4 buckshot in that situation. Which brings us to buckshot. This is mainly what we're considering when we're talking about a home defense load. Buckshot comes in different sizes, from size number 4, which is just under 1/4 of an inch, up to triple-aught, written as 3 zeros in a row, which is almost 3/8 of an inch in diameter. The most common defensive loading is double-aught, written as 2 zeros, and with either 8 or 9 pellets in a 2 3/4 inch shell. As I mentioned before, number 4 buck is a great option where you still want good terminal performance, but where overpenetration through walls is a concern. Once we've determined a basic payload, whether that's an 8 or 9 pellet double-aught buck load, or a 27 or 34 pellet number 4 buckshot load, or anything in between, then we need to figure out power level. All of these payloads can be driven at various different velocities. What we're generally looking for is shot shells that are marketed at defensive purposes, which will fall into two broad categories of standard velocity or reduced recoil, which is a lower velocity. There's also shot shells out there that are considered magnum or high velocity or super high velocity or anything like that. These generally aren't what we need. We can function quite well on the lower end of that spectrum and not deal with the punishing effects of the recoil that comes along with that higher velocity for that payload. But any shot shell that's oriented towards defensive purposes with a standard velocity, lower velocity, that's probably where we want to be. One caveat on power level. If your chosen firearm is an autoloading shotgun, then make sure that it can operate with a lower reduced recoil shotgun shell if that's what you actually want to use. Some of them require higher energy shells or higher velocity payloads in order to function the action of that shotgun, so make sure that you function fire with whatever ammunition you choose to use. Slugs are single projectile ammunition for our shotguns. They usually weigh around an ounce and have application in hunting as well as defensive usage. Slugs come into play when dealing with intermediate barriers and longer distances, so for now we'll just say that you can take a look at those at a later date. We're going to go ahead and just focus on buckshot. So holy Fibonacci, that's a lot of numbers to remember. So how do I choose amongst all that mess? Here's my 2 cents on what to choose for a home defense shotgun load. Basically, choose a buckshot load from a reputable manufacturer of a standard or reduced recoil velocity and make sure it works on your shotgun. Choose double-aught buckshot for general considerations, and if you have overpenetration as a concern, choose number 4 buckshot. Go ahead and pattern that load and move on with life. The next step is patterning. A shotgun payload starts at the diameter of the muzzle and gradually expands as a cone as the pellets disperse while traveling downrange. If you're only concerned with 20 or 30 feet inside your home, you may not think it's super critical what the size of that pattern is, but it actually is quite important. A shotgun pattern is actually almost a single projectile out to a surprising distance, so you need to know and understand, even at close ranges, what your pattern is. It certainly becomes important when longer ranges are concerned. You need to know how far away where your shotgun largely becomes either ineffective or you have pellets that will not be impacting a target of a given size. Anytime I consider a new defensive ammunition, I make sure it functions in my shotguns, and then I go ahead and I pattern that ammunition out to the greatest distance I anticipate employing it. I won't go into a how-to on patterning here, but there are a bunch of resources online, and any good defensive shotgun course will include a section on how to pattern your shotgun. So there's your crash course on shotgun ammunition. Check out our video on shotgun setup as well as other topics at magpul.com and find all of our shotgun accessories there as well.